just got into some crazy kind of stuff out there for a while. And I still felt this tug. I felt this, hey, tapping me on the shoulder, look at what happened to you and look at where you are and look at where you've come. Don't forget how you got there. So my philosophy on life started changing a little bit. And
welcome to the Big Fish Cares podcast. And here's your host, Benny Fisher.
This episode of the Big Fish Cares podcast is a little bit different from some of the ones you guys have been listening to, only because this is one of our team members. He's going to be a guest today. Harry Klaus is actually a new project advisor, salesperson for some of you people that might not know what a project advisor is. Harry's joined our team earlier in the year. Welcome to the show, Harry. You have an incredible story, so I wanted to have you on.
Thanks, Benny. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is, I remember when I first met you, I think it was probably over Zoom. You remember that Zoom interview?
I do.
Yeah, tell everybody what that was like for you, like the interview process at Big Fish.
The interview process at Big Fish was totally different than anything I've ever been involved with from an interview standpoint. The big difference was it felt to me immediately like Big Fish was just a family. And you could feel the energy emanating from within, but more than anything, you could feel that there's a culture here, and there's a difference between what happens at Big Fish than there is in most companies. And that's the thing that really drew me here to begin with. I think you and I have had that discussion more than once about it. I was looking for some place to go where the culture was the most important thing to me. And that's probably what I got the most out of those interviews that we did.
Yeah, because you're not a young guy.
Nope, not anymore.
And
I feel young.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but when you pick your next place to where you want to call home, right? Like, it's probably even more meaningful for someone like you than, anybody else, because you've probably been at a lot of different places, right?
I have, and I think one of the things that I said to you, I think I said it to you, but I definitely said it to Rob, was, I want to pick one more place. I want to go someplace where I can have a major impact not only on the business, but on the people. And I want to have an impact on the culture, and I want to call it basically, this is home. This is where I'm going to retire from.
Why is that so important to you?
I've been a lot of different places. I've done a lot of different things in my life, and one of the things I've kind of learned as I've gone along is that business is business, and some businesses come and they go, and some businesses flourish and some businesses fail, but what winds up happening is the people are always left behind. And making an impact on the people, even if the business fails, making an impact on the people is what's most important. So I think that one of the best things about Big Fish is the amount of care that goes into making sure that the culture here is good and that the people here are well taken care of and involved.
And and I guess you can sense that a little bit through the interview process, but then the interview process, you're only meeting with a couple of us, right? So and again, we can make everything look like glitz and glamour on websites and advertisements and brand stuff, but now that you've been here, tell me, how do you feel now that you've been actually a part of it and you've experienced it?
It's like nothing I've really ever experienced. And
explain that though, because people are that's just a big buzzword.
Well, it's really not. And what it comes down to for me is, everybody talks about culture and those sorts of things. What it comes down to for me is, in most companies you go to, and I've been in a lot of large companies, I've been in a few small companies, but especially in large companies, everybody's infighting. Everybody's fighting against each other, and oftentimes the goals are against each other. And here at Big Fish, nobody's out to get anybody else. Nobody's fighting against anybody else. The collaboration here is absolutely amazing. And the cool thing about it is that collaboration is all driven to the best thing that there can be. And that's driven to making sure that the customer is taken care of, the customer's helped, and that the customer's satisfied. And man, I'll tell you what, if everybody in business in the United States did that, can you imagine the amount of businesses there'd be around?
Why don't they?
Sometimes I think, Ben, it comes down to the money. And I think you get people involved, and it's like, well, I can make more money if I do this, or I can make more money over here if I cheat on this, or maybe if I cut a few corners here or a few corners there, I can do a little better, get my profit up. It's not like that here. And it's kind of funny because I heard some of those stories about, well, hey, we went out and took care of this, or we went out and took care of that, and it wasn't backed up by GAF, and it's like, wow, who does that?
I didn't know there was another way. I was like, I don't know, my reputation means so much to me. So like when I started the company and I didn't have as many people here, I just, we just did that, because I was like, well, I don't want anybody to say anything bad about us, right? You know, and I don't want, and not even say anything bad about us. I actually don't want that customer to experience like pain, right? Like, because, they called us to solve a problem, not to create more of a problem. And I know that sometimes, customers customers, just like team members, just like myself, we all have our own perspective of like what happened and why it happened. And, sometimes we have to sort through some of that stuff. But what are some of the other things that you've noticed, the difference between pre-hire versus like post-hire now that you've been here over 90 days? Like what, I don't know, give me some other things that you've noticed. Because I'm not in the day-to-day anymore, right? So I actually am genuinely asking you these questions kind of twofold. First of all, we're shooting a podcast. Second of all, I actually want to know like what happens when I'm not around anymore.
Well, I think probably the second thing that I noticed right out of the chute was with this company's built to grow. And I think a lot of it had to do with you, and I think a lot of it had to do with Rob. But the things that we have in place here, the systems that we have in place here, the technology that we have in place here, it's like walking into a Fortune 150 company. You would never know you're in a small company.
I've never been in a Fortune 150 company. Have you?
One time. Yeah. And I got to tell you, it's what we do here has the feel of what happens in giant companies. Really? Not in a bad way. I'm saying in a good way.
Yeah.
And this company's built to grow because the things that we're putting in place now and the practices we have in place now, all those things are what you need to grow a big company and to run a big company, but we're used to doing it. We do it every day.
Like, give me an example of like one or two things. Like,
well, just like when we sit down and we do our sales meetings, one of the first things we do is we go through basically the company culture. We go through the things that we stand for. And the other thing that really amazed me is the fact that there's certain different parts of the business that are all put together. There's certain systems that are put together that always happen on the same. Like, for example, I have a one-on-one with Joe.
You mean like our meeting agenda?
The meeting, the meeting agenda.
We check in, we go over the data, we go over the to-dos, the rocks, the issues.
Yeah, that's it. The rocks, the issues, those
it's the
things.
Same meeting every single time. No, obviously we talk about different things, but it's at least you're gonna get in. You're gonna start on time and end on time. And
the other part of that though is that everybody's always checking in with everybody else. I mean, like I was just going to say, Joe and I have our one-on-one every week. And that's where I can raise my issues to Joe. Joe talks to me about things he has going on. And it's not like we don't talk a lot during the week anyway, but there's an official forum for everybody to basically have their feedback. And that
doesn't happen everywhere.
It doesn't happen most places. It really doesn't. Well, at least not from my experience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good to know. I like that. I mean, I always had this dream, obviously when I first started the company, I just wanted to survive. I wanted to make sure I could take care of me and my family. And then when I realized we were hiring, we needed to hire more help because customers demanded, they wanted more roofs done. Right. And I'm only one person and Caesar and his crew's only one couple crews. And it's like, all right, well, we need to hire people. Right. And I always wanted to create a place where, people felt that they were valued, right? People felt like they were doing a good job, right? People felt like there's a way to you don't have to be stuck in the same position for the rest of your life, right? Like where we can grow. And I realized that to grow, you just got to keep doing a great job. You got to keep repeating that. You got to keep, adding people. You got to be able to keep finding new ways to get more business. And that's, I guess that's the part where I think a lot of companies kind of give up and stop, right? Like, especially smaller companies. It's like they get to a point where I guess the owner's satisfied, because he's making enough money that he can go on his vacations and do things with his family. But it's like, all right, now, but what about the rest of the team? And so you like the way that the meetings are going. Is there anything else that you've noticed that's different about here that you're like, wow, this is cool?
Yeah, quality drives everything here.
All right.
And I think I knew that before I came on board because of some of the discussions I had, but I really didn't know.
Yeah.
Until I got here what's really involved in that. And all the things that go into to being rated as highly with GF as we are and doing the things that we do. It's the education here and the training here and the commitment to quality here is just it's amazing.
We do a lot of training. In the early days, I feel like I didn't have time to like be able to do that training stuff. But now, because we've done a good job for customers, we have good people here. We have people that can help facilitate that, right? Like it's not just like me or Rob or Joe getting up in front of the room, right? Like, you know, we have other people that kind of facilitate that. We have team members that can kind of show off their expertise in one certain area, right? And kind of teach other people. How's that? Is that different than other companies?
It's a lot different than other companies.
That's
it really
cool.
Is. It is.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, the environment that we have here is just it's amazing. You see me smiling a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean,
that's because I'm really happy to be here. Yeah,
well, that's good.
Yep.
So tell me, like, what was your journey like? Where did you grow up around here? Like,
yeah, I originally grew up in Pittsburgh. Went to Duquesne University and came out of there and worked for Sears for a little while because everybody worked for Sears. You know, either Sears or Stanley. That was always the joke. Stanley Hardware, Sears. Everybody worked there at one point in time or another. And basically worked there for a while. Wanted to go into management there. Went into their management training program, and it was full. And long story short, so I went to work for another Pittsburgh company called General Nutrition. Worked for them for about a year and a half, and that's when they were just starting to grow and go public. And that really wasn't a good fit for me. So I went to work for what was at that point not a small company, but a much smaller company than it turned out to be, and it was called American Hardware. It was up in Butler. And I started out there, believe it or not, as assistant buyer trainee. And went in there and learned how to be a buyer, and then became basically a buyer, and then wound up managing a team of buyers. And over a period of time, I actually had the opportunity to run their import department for a while, and then got into sales after that. But the thing about that was Service Star and True Value, two giant companies, decided to merge and became a super giant company. So I get to be involved in a lot of that. And the cool thing about that for me was, first of all, being able to travel around the world. And from the import standpoint, being able to see some things that most people really never get a chance to see.
Like, where'd you go?
I was all over Southeast Asia.
That's cool.
Southeast Asia. I spent a lot of time in South America. Actually, probably one of the few people that that actually flew into and was actually in Medellin, Colombia, during the drug crisis. I flew in on a private jet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
You've been in a private jet?
I've been in a lot of private jets.
I'm still trying to get in a private jet, man. I haven't even done that
I've actually been in a lot of private jets, yeah.
So if somebody's watching, I still want to ride a private jet. I've seen them on TV. I've seen them on social media. They kind of look cool. I mean,
they are.
You don't have to like wait at the airport.
No, you don't. And the nice thing about them is they're fast.
Yeah.
They're fast and they're cool.
So you've seen the world, man. That's awesome.
I've seen a lot of the world. And the thing about that really has kind of, I guess, been a major factor in who I've become, I think, though, is getting a chance to see what the world outside this country looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was probably one of the first people from a buying standpoint, from a consumer buyer standpoint that went into China. And that was back in the days when China was trying to put a good face out front, but a lot of the factories were in the backwoods. And you get out there and you see some of the poverty, and these people are working at that time for pennies an hour, and you see how bad things really are. And you get to places like Vietnam and some of the other countries in the world, and man, I got to tell you, the first few times I went over there, when I landed in the United States, man, I wanted to get down on my knees and kiss the ground. We don't sometimes realize, I think, as Americans, how good we really have it. We really do, and we complain a lot and all that stuff, in politics and all that other stuff, but we really have a great country here, and unfortunately, until you're really involved in that, and you're really in a place where you're kind of in the country and you're seeing what's happening and you see what really goes on, you don't really get a good feel for it. So people read it and they see these movies and they see it on TV and they see it on the news. I got a news for you. Till you're out there walking in a rice paddy to get to a factory and you see what people eat, and it's not much during the day, and you see that they live in the factory in a small little room about the size of the room that we're in right now, you get a real good feel for how really good we have as Americans. You really do.
Yeah, I mean, I've never saw any of that before. Like, I've been to Mexico one time on a mission trip and kind of like was out in the country, and and it was definitely humbling, that's for sure. But yeah, I can't imagine, what Southeast Asia's like. I can't imagine what China's like, and some of those like places where like they don't have video cameras, right? I think they don't put cameras there. Nobody wants to know what's probably going on over there. What was life like growing up here in Pittsburgh? Tell us about like your family, your mom and dad. You have brothers or sisters?
I had one sister. She actually passed away here right after Christmas this year. But grew up in, believe it or not, Etna, small little town up north of here, and Grew up pretty poor, to be honest with you. My dad
Like,
worked,
what kind of poor? See, poor is relative, right? Like, when you say poor, I might take it differently. Cody might take it differently.
Absolutely.
So what kind of poor? Describe the poor.
Well, poor to me is my dad worked in the steel mill, and he did all right in the steel mill. I think it was Armco at that point.
Yeah.
And when the steel mill closed down, he literally went from one job to another job to another job, was on, they didn't really call it welfare at that point. It was unemployment and some other stuff like that. But I still remember being a boy. I don't know, I was probably 4 years old, 5 years old. Dad would put me in the old Red Ryder wagon kind of thing, and he'd pull me down to the playground because they were giving out like blocks of cheese and food and things like that. So I remember doing that very vividly because we really didn't.
Like, who was giving it out?
It was
just like pantries and like
a food pantry kind of thing.
Okay.
It was like a once a week kind of thing. You went down and got a block.
And it was because
of cheese.
and you had to go down there because like you couldn't really afford to buy cheese.
No, didn't have money to do it. It was the way to go. And one of the stories that really affected me as a child is I remember, things would get better and then they'd kind of go back to being that way again. And finally my dad got on with a job and he was doing pretty good. And, we still weren't making a whole lot of money. And my mom went out and cleaned houses, 3 or 4 times a week. But there was one day we were shopping and I forget what store it was. It was probably like one of the old stores you probably don't even know about, Kresge's or Woolworths or one of those.
Woolworths. I remember Woolworths. When I was a
that?
kid, there was still a Woolworths around. Yeah.
I remember going in there and there was, I'd always go over to the toy department, and I was looking at this one toy and it was a little like truck that had like a tractor, like a crane on the back, like a tractor kind of thing. And I was always into tractors and I guess that's why I'm in the building industry. But I always wanted to be a tractor driver when I was a kid. That's what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I was looking at this thing. Mom's like, "Well, you really like that, don't you?" And I really do. And she says, "Well, I don't have money to buy it. We don't have money for that." She says, "Is there anything?"
How much was it?
That's probably $2, something like that. $3. I don't remember what it was. So why don't you go over and get some of these little army guys or whatever it was from
some GI Joes or something?
Yeah, the little plastic army guys.
Yeah, the cheap ones. Yeah, well, I used to get buckets of them, right? Like,
So I remember being there, and she said, "Well, why don't you go with your dad over there for a minute?" So I went over with my dad, and we're checking out, and here she has this tractor. So we get out of the store. I'm like, "How did you afford to pay for that?" Just, well, we decided not to buy some other things, and don't worry, we'll get through it. And I said, "Well, why'd you do that?" And she's like, "Because you're my son. That's what you do when you're a parent. That's what you do. You take care of your kids." But she knew that was so important to me at that point. And some of those memories of just not really having much, and I think that probably helped me in my life in a lot of ways. It may have even hurt me a little bit in some ways, because sometimes I think there were times in my life where I was driven by money rather than being driven by the right things.
Yeah, early on in your life, I feel like the same kind of thing. Now, I don't think there was probably times in my life where I was like I don't know about that poor. You know what? There was times. When I was 5 years old, 6 years old, my mom and dad got divorced. My mom worked at the grocery store making probably like, $4 an hour. And even at that time, my dad, I think, was like a general manager of a Denny's. So obviously they, and there was 3 kids, and but when they got divorced, that became really tough, and I know my grandma was there to help my mom out, and I think my mom got a lot of help. So I never really felt like, I didn't know like I was poor, but like if I look back and think about that, I'm like, yeah, like I can't even imagine how 2 minimum wage people can even support 3 kids today. It's like I almost feel like so disconnected from that sometimes. And then like when you tell that story about being in Asia and seeing that, about your own story, and I start to think back to my childhood, I'm like, we are blessed. Like in this, even the poor today is not the poor even of 20 years ago or 30 years ago, or even again, I'm 41, so like even 35 years ago, it's like a different kind of poor. Mm-hmm. So that's why I say, like, hey, what's your poor, right? Because when people say middle class, well, like, what's your middle class? Well, what's your rich? Like, it's all relative, right? What was the first thing like that you ever, was there any times through school or high school or any other stories like that where it was just like, man, you just like went without because but you saw the other kids, like what they were able to get, right?
I got to give my parents credit because I never went without. They would.
Ooh,
I never did.
Okay.
They would always make sure, and I didn't always have everything I wanted.
Yeah, of course.
Far from that.
Yeah.
But I always had everything that I needed. Okay. So I don't really have a story where I necessarily went without something.
Yeah, like the heat was always on. The water bills, the water was coming out. Yeah.
Well, when I think back about it, though, one of the funny things is today it's nothing for us to go out to dinner, right? You decide, hey, I want to go out to dinner, let's go out to eat and things like that. We never went out.
Oh yeah,
never.
We never went out to eat when I was like, I mean, like, you're old enough to be my dad, right? Like, and like, we never went out. One time for our birthday, and it was never anywhere like we can go today. It was like, it was like a $10 meal or something like that. It was one upgrade, one tick past McDonald's.
Yep.
We used to go to McDonald's a lot, but like never like out to a nice restaurant.
Well, until my dad actually got on with it with his secondary job, we didn't even go to McDonald's. I mean, it was like a big thing for us was going to Dairy Queen, and getting
an ice cream cone.
Getting ice cream cone.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. But but then it became like McDonald's was kind of like a thing, but nobody really ever went out to dinner or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's so different.
It's like
the things
you've
we
seen
do.
it all, man. Like over the last 60 years,
yeah.
man. You've
seen a lot.
You've seen a lot. So you mentioned something like, maybe growing up poor, maybe drove you towards like wanting to chase money, right? Talk to us a little bit about like what was life like after high school? Like, what kind of decisions did you make that you think back and you're like, wow, like I was chasing the wrong thing. It kind of made me who I am, but like, maybe it was not the right way to do it.
Well, I think coming out of college, in eventually when I wound up in the hardware industry with American Hardware, I hit the ground running and I actually had some pretty good success right out of the chute. So being a young guy at that point, I was 23, 24, 25 years old. You start to get ahead of yourself in your head and you start thinking maybe that you're more than what you really are. And you start thinking,
cocky.
More than a little cocky. You start thinking that maybe I ought to be telling other people what they need to be doing, that kind of thing that.
Yeah.
So, and you just get this false sense of power. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I had to learn in my life is, hey man, you really don't have power over anybody. You got to take care of who you are, and people will follow you if you're somebody who can lead, and people will follow you if you're somebody who they believe in, but nobody's ever going to follow you just because you tell them, I think you should do this.
Yeah.
Especially when you're wrong,
That's so true.
So it took me a few years to kind of figure that out. And,
did you ever get like that? See, I found myself getting like that with my parents when I was like, in my early, like late 18, 19, 20, early 20s. I would like find some success, like temporary success. And I'd be like, see, mom and dad, like, look, I can make it, right? Like, because I grew up kind of like, with parents that like, had really, they decent jobs. They always went to work, right? They worked hard, but like, they never had enough, right? Like they never had, and I wanted to go out and get more, right? And then when I got more, I'd be like, oh, look, see, you can do it, but it would never last that long, right? Because then I would like, the typical salesperson, right? Where they make some money and like, they didn't for a while, right? Because you would get too big for your britches. At least that's what happened in my life. Mm-hmm. I remember when we did a sales training here just about a month ago, we were asking people to kind of go around and talk about some things that they might have overcome, some adversity that they'd overcome. And you had a really good story. You mind sharing that story?
Which one? There's a bunch of them.
Well, the one about I think the car accident.
The car accident.
Well,
that's a great. That's kind of where I got to, where I was going with that story I was telling you a minute ago. You kind of get ahead of yourself sometimes. And you start thinking that maybe you're more than who you are. Okay. So we were out one night, I think a bunch of us, and we were out partying, and I was drinking a little bit. I was definitely not drunk, but I'm driving home, and at that point I still lived in Shaler, but I was working in Butler, and I'm driving home, Route 8 North, obviously, and it's before they widened the road a little bit, and I'm driving home, and I was in the right lane, and a semi kind of pushed me off the side of the road. And it was in a place where, unfortunately, the road fell off deeply on the right-hand side, and the car literally went sideways first and then end over end 5 times. And I wound up sort of in a tree. Don't remember a whole lot in fact, luckily, I don't remember the accident at all. The first thing that I can remember is actually waking up in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the thing about that whole thing was first of all, I'm glad that I don't remember the accident, because I think it would have been terrorizing. But that was before the seatbelt laws went in. So somewhere, as the car is doing what the car is doing, I get tossed out. They say, at least they think anyway, I get tossed out the back window of the car. All right, so I'm pretty banged up, but they take me to the hospital, and as we're going to the hospital, the ambulance is going around the bend, and I guess he was in a big hurry or something like that, and going around the bend, and he didn't take the bend right, and there was a little berm in the road there, and hit the berm in the road, and the ambulance started tipping a little bit, okay? That woke me up. That was one of the first things I remember, because it really hurt.
Wow,
because
yeah.
the pain kind of woke me up.
Yeah.
But I got into the hospital, and my mom and dad obviously were there. And luckily for me, one of the doctors that was in the practice that we had as family physicians at that point was a director of medical services at UPMC at St. Margaret's, and he was there. And I really don't remember a whole lot about what he said or what he did or anything, but I just remember him saying, "You're going to be okay." And then I was out, and I was out probably for, I don't know, probably a week and a half or 2 weeks, just in a coma.
Really?
Yeah, just out. And,
Wow.
and what they told me was the reason for that is the body just shuts itself. When you get to a point where the pain is too great, the body just shuts itself down. It's going to take care.
Does it on purpose?
It does it on purpose, right? So the next thing I can remember is I can remember waking up one morning, I guess it was, and I was in intensive care, and obviously in a lot of pain. I literally broke every bone in my body at least once. Broke every rib in my body at least twice.
How are you still alive?
I don't know. Grace of God. That's what it is. Broke my pelvis 5 times, both hips, both legs. Literally, when I woke up in the hospital the first time, I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. I could not. The only thing I could do was blink my eyes. I could turn
Couldn't
my
even
head,
move your
turn my head a
fingers.
little bit. Couldn't move anything. And I woke up, and luckily for me, there was it was like a medical assistant. Somebody was standing there when I opened my eyes, and they immediately called a doctor in, and the doctor came in. He was a young guy, and he said, "How are you doing, Mr. Klaus?" And I said, "I'm really in a lot of pain." He said, I kind of suspect that. And he said, "We're giving you something for the pain. Do you still feeling a lot of pain?" I said, "I'm still feeling a lot of pain." And he proceeds to tell me, he says, he asked me a couple questions. He said, do you smoke? I said, "I've never smoked ever in my life." He said, "Do you smoke pot? Do you smoke anything like that?" I said, "I never smoked anything in my entire life." I said, why are you asking me this? And he goes, "When we did your x-rays," he said, "there's a bunch of black marks all over your lungs." He said, "It almost looks like you have lung cancer." Now, remember, I had just woken up from a coma, okay?
Yeah.
And this guy was an intern, all right? And I just blanked out. I was back. I was out. I was probably out for maybe another day. And I woke up again, and as soon as I woke up, they brought my doctor in immediately, and he said, "Look, I know what that intern told you." He said, "The thing about being an intern is you're learning, okay?" And he said what he didn't know at that point was when you have severe trauma like you had, when you snap as many ribs as you snapped front and back, you get little, not punctures in your lung, but you get little dents in your lung all over the place. He said, "That's what we're seeing in the x-ray." He said, "There's like little dents in the lung." He said, "It's going to take a few months for that to heal." He said, "But that's what he was saying." He said, "So don't worry about that. You don't have cancer." I'm like, "Well, that's good." I said, "But I can't move." He said, "Well, that's good and bad." He said, "That's good news and bad news." He said, "The bad news is you can't move." He said, "The good news is we have no reason to believe that you're paralyzed." He said, "There's no breaks in your spinal cord, nothing like that." He said, "So I don't want you worrying about that." He said, "What I want you to know, though, is," he said, "I probably should put you in a body cast." He said, "But the fact that you can't move is actually working to your advantage because body casts are pain, they're itchy, all that stuff like that. So I'm going to just let you basically lie in bed. When you get to the point where you start to move, then we'll talk about whether we need to do a body cast depending on how you're healing." So I probably went for, I don't know, it was probably another week or two that I really couldn't move much. I started to get some feeling in my fingers. And then they sat me
So
up.
you're just laying there.
Just
but
laying.
your brain's still working.
My brain's working, but I was in and out. I mean, they still had me really drugged.
Oh,
I mean, really.
Can you watch TV? I mean, like,
yeah.
How old were you when this happened?
25.
Wow.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a whole lot of stuff going on.
Young man still.
You know.
Yeah.
And then I remember waking up one morning and I just woke up and my fingers were moving. And the doctor came in again. He says, "Okay," he says, I think we're at a point now where we're going to take you upstairs." I was still in intensive care. So we're going to take you upstairs. And the only thing I remember about him telling me that was he said that they needed to do a scan. They needed to do x-rays and a scan before they take me upstairs because they wanted to see exactly what was healing and what wasn't healing. And I don't know if you know how they move people from one bed to another. They basically pick up the sheets and they move them, right?
Oh, yeah. They don't, yeah.
My body's broken.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Everything hurts.
Most intense pain I've ever felt in my entire life.
Just sliding you over.
I just screamed. I just literally screamed. Yeah.
Wow.
So they put me back out like immediately, and just put me back out to do the test and everything. So then I wake up in my room, okay, and I can move my hands now, and my arms are starting to get a little bit of feeling back in them, but still not great. St. Margaret's Hospital had just been built, the new St. Margaret's over here in Aspinwall. The old one was down in Lawrenceville. And I'm up on the 5th floor, and I can see Route 28 out in the back there. So at least it gave me something to watch during the day. I can watch TV now and everything. And the nurse comes in and she says, "Do you feel like eating, Mr. Klaus?" She said, "The doctor said you can have some scrambled eggs." And I said, "Well, I can try that." So tried that, and kind of made me a little bit nauseous, and made it through the day. And my parents were great; they were there. My sister, everybody was there. And it gets to be nighttime. Everybody goes home, and the night crew comes in, and I don't know, it was probably a little after midnight. And my days and nights are mixed up now because I've been out so long, right?
Yeah.
So I'm watching TV. And all of a sudden, the fire alarm in the hospital goes off. Okay, now I can't move. Right? I can kind of lift my hands a little bit.
Do you have a button you can at least press?
Oh yeah, I had a button I could press.
Hey, can someone help me out?
But here's the funny thing about it is all the doors automatically slam shut.
Was it just a drill?
Yeah.
Oh, but you didn't.
But
know that.
well, neither did the hospital.
Oh.
So I'm hitting the nurse button. Nobody's answering, and I'm like, oh great. Oh. So I lived.
The drill's not going very well.
So I lived through this whole ordeal, right? Only to die in a hospital fire, kind of thing, And I'm freaking out. I must have pushed that button 1,000 times, And finally, the nurse comes in. She said, "I'm so sorry for that. They didn't tell us what was going to happen, but I guess the fire marshal must have come in and just hit the button to see what the response time was going to be." All right. Great.
Failed.
Next night they do the same thing. Did it all over again.
They didn't tell you?
By now, no, they didn't tell anybody. But by now, at least I knew kind of what was going on. So, but then feelings started coming back slowly, and I started being able to move my toes and legs and things like that. And the next thing I remember, one of the biggest milestones was they sit you up, okay, and they sit you up in bed, and sitting up in bed is much different than actually sitting up in a chair. So what they do is they move you flat over onto a like a portable chair kind of thing. But as they sit you up, they actually push the back of the chair up, and then they bend your legs down. I just started puking.
Wow.
Because my equilibrium was off from being laid flat for so long. And I can remember I started puking and then the pain from literally sitting up. And then they did that a few times a day until I finally got my equilibrium back and everything. And from there on out, it was just progress. How to learn how to walk. How to learn how to walk all over again. Basically got to learn how to do everything.
How long from the time you went into the hospital to the time they let you go?
From the time I went in until they actually let me go home, I believe was somewhere in the vicinity of about 9 to 10 weeks.
And then
I was in
therapy.
And then
were you living at your own house, or did you?
I was living with my parents at that point.
So you were living with your parents even though even before the wreck, right?
My parents' house is kind of funny. They had a house, but there was a set of stairs I could get upstairs, so I kind of had my own little apartment.
Gotcha. All right. So then, so basically, you're at mom and dad's, because that's where you lived. How long until you were I don't know, able to I'm sure you started to rehabilitate, right?
Oh yeah, I was literally in physical therapy for about a year and a half.
Okay, no job, can't work.
Well, no, I was actually able to go back to work. Here's the cool thing. Here's one of the coolest things there is, and you say a lot of things about big companies, right? And how bad they can be and how tough they can be. When I finally got my faculties back to me, I remember my boss, the VP, his name is Paul Pence. He walked into the hospital. It was the first time I'd see him, and he said, "Look," he said, "I want you to know, first of all, you're going to be out for a while, but you still got a job. Okay? Second thing he said, I don't care what you do. I don't care if you do anything until you get back. He said, but if there's something you'd like to do to keep yourself busy, you let me know." And I said, okay. So they had this, they used to call it the Policies and Procedures Manual for the buying department, okay? And it was antiquated. I mean, it was so bad. And I said, as he's walking out the door, I said, "Hey, Paul." So what? I said, "How about if I rewrite the Policies and Procedures Manual?" He goes, "Well, that'd be a great thing." So that gave me something to do during the day when I was sitting there in the hospital. So I think it was probably month 8.
This is back before computers, though, right?
It's back before computers. Yes, I did it all
so
by
I'm
hand.
Thinking what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing it by hand, right? I think month 8, I finally was able to get back and actually spend a day a week in the office.
Wow.
If somebody drove me and come back, and it was almost a year before I was able to drive.
What did this whole process teach you? What were you like?
It taught me a bunch of things.
Yeah. What did it teach you in the moment? And then tell me about as you got older, looking back at it, what it taught you. Because I'm sure you can only the past happened, right? It happened, right? Everyone's perspective of it is their perspective, but you can always look back at one point and keep learning lessons from the same thing, right?
Right.
That's what I'm learning right now, anyway.
Well, I think it taught me a couple of things in the moment that I didn't really realize until later. But one of the things it taught me in the moment was the past is the past. I couldn't change it. I couldn't go back and uncreate the accident. I couldn't go back and be unparalyzed. I couldn't go back and get rid of the pain. None of that was ever going to change. So that was a lesson learned, that what happens in the past, sometimes you just have to leave in the past. You learn from it, but what's most important is the present and what you do with the future, right? So that kind of changed my whole way of thinking right there.
But you learned that on your own because of that incident, right?
That's one of the things.
It wasn't like there was books there. Nobody was like pouring into you. Like, it was just
a lot of time to think.
You just figured it out yourself.
Get a lot of time to think when you're just laying there in bed, when you get tired of watching daytime TV. Daytime TV kind of sucks,
Yeah, soap operas, right? Yeah, and game shows.
Click.
Right? Soap operas and game shows. That's at least what it was in the early 90s for me. But
yeah, it's like click, turn that stuff off. So that was probably one of the biggest lessons I got right up front was, hey, you can't change what happened. So what started driving me was, okay, I can't change what happened, but I got another chance at this. Because I could have been dead. I could have been paralyzed. I could have been partially paralyzed. But that kind of gave me this vision of, you know what, not many people really get the opportunity to have a second chance at life. So that's kind of where my whole focus on life started to change. And it was like, somebody upstairs was taking care of me.
Were you like a man of faith, like before that accident happened?
I went to church, went to Lutheran church and went through the motions like everybody else does,
Gotcha.
But one of the things I started doing when I was in the hospital is my sister brought me this little tiny, and I carry it in my backpack to this day, as a little tiny New Testament.
Okay.
That I started reading every night. I'd read a little bit of it, and things like that. Because there's no way that you can think when you're laying there paralyzed after an accident like that this just happened and it was happenstance that you're going to be okay. At least I can't feel that way. Something had to intervene to be absolutely certain to make sure that you're going to be able to get up and walk again, and you're going to be able to go and do things again. I mean, if you were to look at the X-rays from back then, my body was broken. I mean, it was literally almost snapped in half. Somehow, some way, my back and my spinal cord were involved. Everything else broke. Not my spine, not my spinal cord. It's crazy. It's crazy.
My grandpa broke his spinal cord in like 1980 in a farming accident. He was paralyzed, quadriplegic for the rest of his life. He passed away in 95, but yeah, he was alive, but could never feed himself, could never do anything like that. So
could have been me.
Yeah.
It could have been me. So that kind of starts changing your whole way of thinking. But I'm still young. Right, so
yeah, you're a young man.
So I'm still dumb. Okay, so you learn these things, and then you go out and you get back into life, and like I said, the past is the past, you can't change it. But one of the things I learned in the next 10 years was, even though you can't change the past, if you don't look at the past and see what you did wrong, sometimes you have a tendency to want to do it over again.
Yeah, history repeats itself.
Exactly. So it took me about 8 or 10 years to figure out that, you know what, you're not really who you think you are. You're not such, this big guy. You're just a guy. But you have to figure out what your real purpose is in life. And it took me a while to figure that out.
So how did you figure that out? What was the point in your life that that you said, wow, like where like it shifted again to where you had more purpose?
Well, I think probably what got me off track again was the fact that I was young. And it's like, hey, look what I came back from. I'm invincible, dude. I can do this. I just came back from a debilitating accident. I'm just fine, right? It's all good. So you start thinking, well, okay, bring it on, man. It's all good. It's all good. You can do anything you want. You're like Superman.
So now you're 35-year-old Superman instead of 25-year-old Superman.
Yeah, 28, 29, 32, right?
Yeah, whatever, yeah.
You tend to lose sight of what really happened. You never forget it.
Right.
But
you
it's
actually
sort of
used that as fuel in kind of a weird way, but like it wasn't actually towards it wasn't towards a true purpose. You were still you didn't know what you didn't know yet.
I didn't know what I didn't know. And the other thing was I was so driven from a business standpoint that I just wanted to be this. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to make the most money.
And why do you think that? Do you think that came from growing up poor? Or where do you think that drive came from?
Well, the drive to make money probably came from growing up poor. The drive to be the best, I think, is something that was instilled in me by my mom. Okay. First of all, early on, and my dad, and I'm just God hardwired me to say, if you're going to do something, do it right. Gotcha. I'm just that's just the way I am. If you're going to do it, if it's worthwhile doing, if you're going to take the time to do something, you might as well do it the right way. And as I got past that period of time, my faith started to grow obviously, and you and I have had discussions about that. So I find that there's somebody greater than me, and that becomes very humbling.
At what point though? So after the accident, after you were still, Macho Man Harry, even 7-8 years later, like at what point, like, did you take the faith more serious?
Well, I took it seriously right after the accident.
Okay.
And this is a funny story because I think, as you know, I lead a small group at our church, and I've told this story to them many times, and asked me the same question. It's like, I literally turned my back on God. I literally walked away, and it was like, what are you doing for me? And like I said, it was still one of those things where it's just, I know what he did for me over here, but now I'm over here, and it's like, what are you doing for me now? What are you doing for me today? Right? And just literally kind of turned my back. And
so easy to do.
Oh, it's
like, why? Yeah.
It happens before you even think about it.
Yeah. And then once you get lost, it's like once you start to like run away again, like it's almost like, well, then you're gone. It's just like, it can happen quick.
Yeah. And I probably spent a good, 5-6 years just kind of out there doing my thing. Doing all the stuff I shouldn't have been doing.
On your own merit again. Like I'm trying to do on your way, the Harry way.
Being out there and drinking and doing all the stuff I shouldn't have been doing, and going through a couple divorces, and
couple.
Wow. My wife, thank God for my wife right now. She's number 3. So
wow.
Just got into some crazy kind of stuff out there for a while, and I still felt this tug. I felt this, hey, tapping me on the shoulder. Look at what happened to you, and look at where you are. And look at where you've come. Don't forget how you got there. So my philosophy on life started changing a little bit, and maybe it's age. Maybe it was kind of the shine of youth kind of started to wear off a little bit, and maybe it was the fact that my trajectory of True Value was kind of coming to a close because they merged, and the company was so large now that there wasn't the same trajectory that I had. So maybe now it was just. Hey, you need to start focusing on who you really are.
Was there any type of turning point? Was there any type of like life happening? Like, was it after the second divorce? Was there did you lose a job? Like, did anything happen that you like really, that aha moment that like really started then, instead of like the up down that started the up then? Like,
I don't know that there was really any one thing.
Okay.
I think there were a bunch of things, and a lot of it came from, okay, so, you had this job that you really loved, and, because of a lot of different things that were going on, you decided to make a change. And then I got this great job. I was running this company and doing the whole thing on my own. And then, Black Monday kind of hit when, the automotive stocks all fell to pieces, and that company wound up having to close. So it's kind of like that up thing and then that down thing, and kind of did a bunch of things after that, started my own business, and that kind of fell apart. And
yeah, I remember you telling me about starting your own business. Didn't you have a business partner too?
Yeah.
And then like that didn't really work out well. Didn't you lose your whole life savings and everything? And
well, I'm not going to talk about that. Let's suffice it to say that I basically started over again.
Yeah.
Okay. To the point where, and I'm not looking for any sympathy at this point, but I remember very, very vividly one day, the care pastor from our church knocking on the door, and Marcia and I were sitting there going, maybe we need to start thinking about selling the house. Okay. And he walked up and he said, somebody left this for you at the church. He said, and he wouldn't even talk. And Bob's the kind of guy like me. He'll talk to you forever.
Yeah.
He just turned around and walked away. And we're thinking about how we're going to make the mortgage payment. Right. Okay. So I walked in and opened up the envelope, started crying. There was like over $500 in cash in the envelope with a little note that said, at one point in time, somebody helped me that I didn't even know. And I decided that I was going to save up some money and give it to Bob to give to somebody who needed it at a point in time. And that was the big turning point. I mean, my life just got better from there. It really did. Everything, started turning around, and I started feeling better about myself.
How many years ago was that?
5, 6.
Oh, wow. That's pretty recent.
Yeah, pretty recently.
$500 in an envelope coming from the pastor.
And it wasn't even from the pastor. It was from some unnamed
person. No, it wasn't
person.
from him. He was just a delivery man. Yeah.
I mean, that, I was already on that upstream where I was becoming the person who I am now. I was well on the way. But I mean, there was just one of those moments where...
Just another aha moment.
Sometimes God looks down and says, okay, now it's time for you to remember who I am. And that was one of those, here's who I am. kind of things. I'm going to take care of you.
Really bring you to your knees and try to serve them even more.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
So that was pretty amazing. Yeah. But, so, I mean, there were a lot of ups and downs in life. And one of the reasons why I really loved coming here, kind of getting back to what our conversation was up front, was I know you and I had this discussion during our first interview. It's like, I'm looking for some place where money is important, but the culture is the most important thing to me. Yeah, I want to get to a point where I love working with the people I love with. I want to get to a point where everybody works together rather than against each other. I want to get to a point where people aren't in silos competing with each other, where it's a common focus on what the end result is, and the end result is taking care of the customer, taking care of the homeowner. That was the most important thing to me coming here, and that all resulted from all the bad things that happened to me throughout life, and seeing how people weren't always taken care of, and sometimes people put money in front of doing the job the right way. And one of our guiding principles here is do the right thing, right? I tell almost every homeowner that I talk to, it's like, and one of the reasons why I came to this company is one of the guiding principles of this company is always do the right thing. It's one of the reasons why I'm here.
Well, there's a lot of people that say that, though, right? Like
we do it.
Yeah, I know. Again,
we do it, dude.
Because I'm the founder and the owner. It's like,
but we do it.
I hear you.
But we do it.
Always
exceed expectations. I mean, how many companies always seek to exceed expectations? Do we always do it? Probably not, but we're always trying to. And if we don't exceed expectations, it's not for lack of trying. We're always trying to do that. I mean, this company is so homeowner focused that I wish more people knew about it. I wish more people knew about what's
not doing a good job marketing, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, when you sit and you talk to people and they see what we do and they see the emphasis we put on following up and like me being at a job start in the morning and following up on a phone call that night and saying, hey, how did it go? And then following up like a month later saying, hey, how's things going now? People don't believe they get that kind of service. And that's what we're all about. That's what we do.
I mean, listen, I don't even want to be... I'd rather go work at McDonald's if we can't do it that way. Like I'd literally, I would rather just if we can't do it that way, I don't want anything to do with it.
I mean, that's so different. That's so different than what's out there. Companies are so money driven that they forget about where the money's coming from.
I just feel like I got a house, I got a car, I don't know. I can only go. I guess I maybe come from a different, I don't know, we all grew up the same way. I feel like everyone that works here, we all grew up with way less than what we have now. And it's we're so appreciative of just what we have. And it's and that's enough. I mean, to me, that's enough. If we get extra, cool. Put it to good use, right? I feel like a lot of us here have taken our pain. You've had pain, I've had pain. We turned it into purpose. That's the whole reason I started this podcast, was really to kind of tell these stories of these transformational stories of how to overcome adversity. Why do some things happen? How can you take something that was in the past, right? That's a fixed thing, and then continually grow from it. And it's a testament to people like you that have these stories that are part of this company and part of this fabric. And Harry, I'm really glad to have you. It's really good. It's really you know what I love about this company. Don't tell all the young guys at this company, but we have such a great group of what I call the 55 plus. There's 7, 8 of you. I love, and part of the reason I think maybe I have so many of you around because I love learning from you.
Well, the cool thing about
it might be a little selfish. I love just feeling the energy, and I'm not saying that the young guys don't have the energy and the young girls don't have the energy. But there's just something being surrounded by that old school, just that vibe, man.
You know what though? Here's the cool thing about Big Fish. I've been in companies before where I'm one of the older guys and there's the young guys. And the young guys are they don't know what they're talking about. And the old guys are why would I even take my time to try to train this guy or try to teach?
Yeah.
It's not like that.
No.
I'm telling you, the culture here, we got something special.
We can learn from everybody.
We have something really special here.
Oh, that makes me feel good.
We do.
I always really wonder because I try to stay out of the way because if I'm in here every day, I can drive people nuts because I'm so oh, you didn't answer the phone like that. Oh, we could do that better because I am hyper focused on always trying to get better. To a point to where a lot of people, it's hard to keep up with that kind of energy, So I try to I watch from afar. I'm in all the meetings. I know what's going on. I feel it. I'm just glad to hear that that's because that's when I'm dead and gone and when you're dead and gone, hopefully it's not for another 40 years, but
hopefully, yeah.
But I want to know that this place is because it's going to it's going to be here a lot longer than us.
For sure.
Because it is. It's bigger than just any one person anymore.
It is.
It was the Benny Show like in 2015 and 16, maybe even 17. But as we started to get some of these amazing people that are here, and like the community and the customers, it's like so much bigger, right? Like the impact that we're making. You talk a lot about impact. What's impact mean to you?
Well, in what I do today, impact to me means making the person that I'm working for, which in this case is the homeowner, making sure that they get not only what they wanted, but more than they expected. That's impact. And it's kind of funny because that leads me into one of the things that I was going to say, and that is my wife says this to me every once in a while, not often, but every once in a while. She said, how long are you going to work? And before I started here, it probably would have been, well, I'm probably going to work a couple years, and no, I don't want to quit.
Yeah.
I don't want to quit. And you and I have had this discussion before too. The only way I want to transition out of here is if there's something else out there for me to do that serves people. And you and I have had that discussion.
There's going to be a lot of people here. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of people here that you can mentor, coach,
that's what
guide.
I mean, man.
Plus, you have your church people that you can hang out with.
All about wanting to help people at this point. That's what it.
That's all leadership is helping people. Whether you as long as you help one person, you're a leader.
I think there's a lot more people we can help just one.
No, I know, but even the janitor, at somewhere, right, or the fry guy at Chick-fil-A, if leadership is just a fancy word for help, in my opinion,
you're right.
I know that they have hierarchies, and there's and I know I'm the owner. I hate that. I feel like everyone owns this company. You know what I mean? I just was the crazy guy that had to start it, and
I think everybody feels that way.
I think
everybody
one day
here feels like they have ownership.
Yeah, well, they should, because it really does. I hope that you guys are making, you guys come up with ideas, right? You guys solve problems. You guys, new processes come. It ain't coming from me anymore. I can tell you that, because you guys are the ones that are out there every day, seeing new things, seeing what's happening in the market. If we have to pivot, we change, right? That's the other thing I always like being a part of. Is I always want to be able to be flexible enough to always keep shifting to what the market wants, what the homeowners want, right? What the customers want, and
always changing.
And it's interesting because you hear so many things oh, can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? And now I start to feel like I'm the old guy, right? Especially as we start seeing, I interviewed a 21-year-old today that's going to be a new project manager. I'm old enough to be his dad. You're old enough to be my dad. It's I feel it's whoa, this is wild. I just had a baby. I have a 7-month-old at home right now. It's it's so fascinating.
But it's cool watching it grow, right?
It is. And Ed talks about this a lot. Ed's even when I get really old and I can't drive to a homeowner's house and help them with a roof project, I still want to be able to sit in my rocking chair and just watch big fish grow, right? And watch the impact that we can make on the community and the different people in our lives and our family's life, right? Because then people are watching, right? Your wife's watching, your family's watching, the people at your church are watching, the people you live up in Cranberry area, right?
Yep.
So the people in Cranberry are watching, they're watching me, they're watching you, they're watching our coworkers, they're watching the way we operate. And eventually, you mentioned, you hope, more people find out about us, right? And they will, at the right time, right? Because, we wouldn't even be able to take on as many people that need help, right? There's a million homeowners right now in the Southwest Pennsylvania that they all need help, and I wish we could help them all. But we got to find good people to do business with, right? And we pick them up a couple at a time, right? And it's almost kind of I envision myself, one day I was all alone and I was walking on this road. And then, I met, Ed and Lisa, and boom, they started coming, right? And then there was the three of us walking, and then we picked up David and Frank and Tommy and Steve, and I hope I don't forget anybody's name, but and then they started coming. And then we had Rob and Mallory and Tori and Chad and Valerie and who else am I? I'm probably missing a bunch of people from that era, right? And then you're this recent era, right? And again, I think we're hiring someone else that you worked with that you thought, oh, they're going to fit great into this culture.
And she is. Yep.
And she starts next week, right? Yep. And that's the kind of that's the kind of power it's going to exponentially grow. And it's the homeowners of Pittsburgh. As more people get out there and start spreading the word, it's going to grow. And God's going to allow it to happen at the pace that it's supposed to happen. And I always used to say, like, oh, yeah, we got to do this, we got to do that. It's like, no, we just got to keep doing the right thing. If we keep doing the right thing, it'll be like a big sequoia tree. And like, it might have started out as a little dandelion.
Seed.
Yeah, little dandelion. I was a little bit, a weed that was like, just not knowing how to flourish the right way. But through my own personal life transformation and then being able to hopefully have impact on everyone else here and being open and vulnerable, right? Like it took you a lot of courage, I think, to tell your story in front of, your brand new peers, right? Because everybody was afraid, like, to open up, right? But you went right in there and were very authentic. And the more I've learned that if you can lead with authenticity and vulnerability, people will open up to that. People will receive that.
Well, let's face it, and from two different standpoints. I mean, first of all, homeowners out there, I think they've come to expect that most contractors either don't do a good job or they're going to somehow, not meet their expectations or cut corners or whatever. And like you said, they don't know what we do. A lot of them don't know what we do. And the way we exceed expectations and the things that we do is different than what the rest of the industry
It's hard to put that in a marketing message. It's hard to put that in a proposal. Like, you're like, oh, hey, Mr. Homeowner, you're going to get this, and here's your price. Oh my gosh, you're a couple $1,000s more. Why? Oh, it's our people. Everybody says that. You know what I mean? It's like, it's true. Like, it's like you don't know until you know.
You know what, Ben? You're right. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
We can't tell them that.
Right.
But our customers do.
Yeah, I know.
600 plus 5-star Google reviews.
Yeah.
The people talk. The people speak.
Well, and even the people that don't know how to leave the Google review, because I had a lot of customers back in the older days that, like, they didn't know what Google was. They didn't know, like, how to use their phone. But they're still spreading that message, one person at a time. Like the old-fashioned way, kind of like the way Jesus was probably spread back in the old days, One person had an experience. Mm-hmm. They saw the miracle happen. They went into another village. They told somebody, "Oh yeah, there's people at Big Fish, right?"
Word of mouth, yeah.
It is really like it's happening. I can feel it.
It is. The other side of it, though, is being vulnerable. I have no problem telling people where I've been. I have no problem telling people some of the dumb things I've done, because I think that to be a leader, or to even try to be a leader, I think you have to show people what your authenticity is. You have to let them know that they can count on you on the good or the bad.
Yep.
And that you're not going to put on this facade.
Well, we're not perfect.
Well, look who I am. Just do what I say.
Yeah.
Well,
no one's perfect.
It doesn't work that way.
It's how you respond, right, to a challenge, right? And that's why I also love to, like, I don't even mind every once in a while, like, of course I don't like it when we get a bad review, or I don't like that. But, like, I know that our people are responding to those challenges. I know our people are going to respond in a manner because, again, that's the culture that we've created. Because, again, like, there's no, some people do eventually tap out. There's situations, right? But it's very few and far between where, like, a homeowner and somebody at Big Fish can't figure out a solution or a path forward. And I think a lot of people just give up. I think customers sometimes give up on contractors. I think contractors give up on customers. I think that, we kind of lump everybody in together, like, oh, hey, I had a bad experience with a contractor 10 years ago. Now I'm on guard. Every contractor's like that. I get why people say that, but hopefully they can see through our consistency over time, and it's only been 8 years too, which is even more fascinating, right? I look back and be like, wow, like, because I don't know any different. But like when I hear stories from guys like you who have been in other companies, who have been places, it does make me feel proud.
You should be.
Yeah, because it's like, it's only been 8 years. And like sometimes I think, oh, well, we should have 1,000 reviews, or we should have because I know we've helped over 6,000 customers. Like I keep track. Like we've had 6,000 people like pay us money for something, and it's like, all right, well, we should have at least 6,000 reviews, but like, I have 600. And I say only, it's like, no, we have 600. Shoot, there's restaurants that don't have 600 reviews. You know how easy it is to like say that was a great hamburger or a steak? We're doing $15,000 roof jobs and it's like Vietnam. Stuff's piling all over. it's like a war zone at people's houses. I can't believe it goes as good as it does, but it's our crews.
It's a testament to what you created.
It's the relationships, I think. It's the relationships and the connections. Is there anything that we didn't cover today that you wish we would have covered?
Oh, probably a million.
Well, what else?
Things,
you had some notes. Is there anything else I know, but is there anything else? We still have a few minutes left. I mean, is there anything else you want to share?
No, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me just is, like I said, I keep coming back to that word culture. But, you know, I wish more companies would take the time, the focus, the energy that gets put into the culture here and gets put into the people here to create the experience that the end user gets. Because I think if they did that, business in the United States would just flourish even more.
It's easy. Hey, listen, when you pour into the people pour into the customers, right? Like, and it's just, I mean, to me, it's like, I don't know. My whole life, it just seems so obvious. I couldn't figure out why nobody else was doing it. Like, I was a little kid, I remember. I'm like, well, why don't everybody do this and do that? And then I got into the real world, and then, you know, my boss was, oh, no, we can't do that. Oh, that kid, they kept saying, kid, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's a terrible idea. And I'm like, no, like, we should be able to create this world where, like, everyone just does the right thing all the time, and the results will just speak for themselves. Like, we don't have to chase anything. You just, here's what we got to chase. Chase, like, showing up on time, doing what you say you're going to do. And those are really the two guiding principles that really help start this company. So, Harry, I'm really glad that you're here because we need your energy. We need your enthusiasm.
Happy to be here. And you know, it's funny. We started out the conversation before we started rolling the cameras about, you know, what do you want your legacy to be? And I said, I really don't want to have a legacy. I want people to remember me by what I did. You know, not necessarily by, you know, I built this building or I did things like that, because I think sometimes people get so involved in, I want to have my name on this, or I want people to remember me because I did this or I taught that or whatever. And when I think of the word legacy, I think that's probably one of the things that kind of turns me off maybe about that word. It's like, well, I don't really want to have, I don't want people to remember me because I put my name on a building. I want people to remember me because of the people that I taught. I want people to remember me because of the people that I helped. To me, that's where my legacy will come from. It doesn't even need to be my name. It's going to be what people do because of their interaction they had with me. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's more than any legacy. You could build
that is your legacy.
You could build a giant skyscraper.
I will say that is your, yeah. Well, that's a different. I know what you're saying. If you go out and try to over-try for, some type of, like, you know, fame or fortune or celebrity, like, I totally get that. But let me just tell you, I can firmly tell you that when you're dead and gone one day, that you've left a legacy, and it's been a freaking amazing legacy. Like, even, like, right now, you could drop over today, right now. I'm just going to tell you that story.
Not planning on it.
No, I know. Well, hey, listen, it ain't your plan anyway, right? It ain't your plan anyway.
Right.
God's obviously kept you here for a reason.
Absolutely.
I mean, he knew you were stubborn in the early days, and now you're stubborn just in a good way, though. Like, it's like you're going to keep showing up, right? Like, you're going to keep going. That's that same personality. You're just using it instead of for bad. Now you're using it for good, right? And you're making an impact. So there's 5 questions I ask every guest.
Okay.
So there's nobody left on planet Earth. You're by yourself. You're on an island. Okay. You could pack a couple of things. You got to take a book. You're only allowed to take one book. What book do you take with you?
Oh, that's an easy one for me. Taking the Bible.
All right. What about, you're allowed to take one movie with you. What movie do you take with you? Something you got to watch over and over again.
You're going to think this is really crazy.
No.
Animal House. You know why? Because it makes me do just that. It makes me laugh.
Yeah,
I laugh every time I watch that movie.
You gotta laugh, man.
Yeah.
You gotta laugh.
And I love to laugh. I mean, I just love to be happy.
We gotta eat. So what restaurant you putting on your island?
Man, that's a tough one. It's going to have to be something Italian. It's probably going to be a pizza joint.
Well, what's your favorite pizza joint? Could be...
I've got a bunch of them.
I know, but what's the one that you're going to put on your island that you can go to over and over again and not get sick of? You just love it so much.
That's a really tough question.
Just pick it. Come on, it's right in the top of your head.
All right, I'm gonna say it this way. Domino's.
Domino's Pizza, the chain?
The chain.
No way.
Let me tell you why. They deliver on time, fast, and it's hot. Now, that being said, is that my favorite pizza?
Yeah, but like this is like
That's my favorite experience.
Okay, but you're gonna be on the island, and you're like, what's the best? What's your favorite? Like, what? I get that it's an experience. All right, I'm gonna let you pick Domino's, but I have a hard time believing that Domino's pizza
because of the experience.
Yeah, all right, but tell me, like, what's your favorite Italian joint to go eat at? Like, if you're here, listen, you're taking me out to dinner. Where are we going that you could like, that you love, that you want me to try? And you could eat there over and over and over again. Money's no object. You don't have to worry about delivery because you're going to be there. They're going to be making the food for you.
Man, there's so many.
Just pick one. I just want to know one. I just want to get in. I want to know what you like. I definitely don't want to go to Domino's because of Harry.
Well, I'm not going to go to Domino's.
I remember Domino's when I was a kid in school. On Thursdays we get Domino's, and like it always tasted like cardboard. No offense, Domino's. I don't want to deal with you. So,
all right. So if I was just going to have one restaurant,
yeah,
I would probably say I would have it be Springfield Grill.
Where's that at?
It's one of them's in Cranberry.
Okay.
Yeah. And because they do Italian good, they do steaks good, they do that would give me that variety that I want. So I wouldn't have to have the same thing every day.
Gotcha. All right, good. Springfield Grill. I'm going to have to put that on my list because I've never been there before. So that'll be awesome. All right. So you're allowed to take one trip. You can go anywhere in the world. And I know you've been to a lot of places. So it could be somewhere you haven't been to yet, somewhere where you want to go back to. You get a week. Where are you going to go?
Caribbean islands.
Which one?
Any of them.
Pick one. You have a hard time making a decision. Pick one.
No, I don't have a hard time making a decision. All right.
Curacao.
Yeah.
Our buddy Jay lives in Curacao. One of our other video and editor guys. Really? Oh, yeah.
Cool.
He's actually flying up to drive the VCon with Cody next week.
Cool.
Curacao.
I'll take his place while I was going.
There you go. That is so wild that you just said that. Yeah. That's why I wanted you to pick an island,
I've never been there. And it just looks so beautiful. I mean, I love the ocean. I love listening to the ocean.
Yeah, it's close to Aruba, kind of close to South America. Yeah, awesome. All right, last question.
Oh, this is going to be the toughie.
This is the toughest one. You got 24 hours you can spend with one person and ask, spend all day with them, ask them any questions you want, pick their brain. Could be somebody famous, could be somebody from way back in the past, could be somebody that you know, could be anybody you want. You got 24 hours, one person. Who's it going to be?
Do they have to be living?
It doesn't matter. No, it could be someone dead. It could be someone living.
Jesus.
Like Jesus in the flesh, Jesus. Like the Jesus that that walked the earth, Jesus.
I would have loved to
not
have
the
been,
spirit, Jesus.
I would have loved to have spent a day with him when he was here.
Wow.
That would have been thoroughly amazing. I mean, I know things were crap back then compared to what we have today and stuff like that. But to see the miracles he did,
to
me, that would just be amazing.
And then maybe you could ask him for, hey, can you bring more people around? Because I'm out here by myself. On this island. Harry, it's been an honor. I really appreciate you. If you guys got value out of this podcast, I know I did. Like, subscribe. If you have any questions for Harry, put them in the comments. I'll make sure he gets them. Make sure he responds. We'll see you on another episode of the Big Fish Cares podcast every Friday. Thanks and have a great weekend.
Thank you for listening to the Big Fish Cares podcast.